I will do the right deal at the right time. And again, if it means we have to wait a few months, I'm not going to build it for the sake of building it. If you own a world scale asset that the majors want to buy, and again, there's companies in Colombia and Ecuador that have found a new range of copper gold elephants. Those stocks have traded well. What we really want to show with this first resource is that we're in elephant country. There's going to be a very steady series of news flow over the next few weeks, which I think will really demonstrate the potential that we believed was there with Crawford to be truly one of the great nickel cobalt sulfide discoveries of this decade and potentially beyond this decade.
Hello and welcome to Crux Investor. First of all, thank you very much for watching this video. If you like it, give us a thumbs up. And of course, please leave your comments below because we do try and get back to absolutely everyone. And for those of you who haven't already done so, please click the subscription button in the corner of the screen. And if you want to see more videos like this, click the notification bell. We speak today to Mark Selby, who has just gone public with Canada Nickel Corporation. They're a small nickel sulfide play in Canada. They've got a business plan to deliver an accelerated growth. Mark talks us through precisely what that means and how he's going to deliver it. Take a look in the description below. If you want to click on any particular topic, you can click the timestamp and that'll take you to that part of the video. Anyway, let's hear what Mark had to say. Hello, Mark Selby. How are you, sir?
Good, sir. How are you? It's been a while.
Yeah. You've had your head down because we spoke to you, a few weeks ago now, and you're in the process of getting Canada Nickel Corporation through the TSX and making it public. You're there now. Must be pleased.
Yeah, very happy to start trading today. It's been several months to get through this process, but again, it's a regulatory process, so it does take time. But we're glad to finally be there, and then we can actually start talking about the story again, because there's been lots going on in the project.
Tell me, you got to tell me about this, okay? Because we usually speak to people when they're public and been trading a while, or they got their own issues and stuff. But there's we start talking to you pre-IPO. There's a real process to go through, and yeah, give me an idea. Give people at home the sorts of things that you've kind of got to get through to be able to go public. What are the topics that the exchange wants to know about?
Yeah, so again, I think with the transaction that we had, and again, it was just the nature of where the asset was. There was sort of several degrees of difficulty, that we had to kind of jump through. So again, if you think of the majority of IPOs, it's a single asset that's been acquired from one company to another. It's either an IPO or then an RTO, transaction. And that goes on. We first had to deal with the fact that we were consolidating a joint venture between two other small public companies, and then some private, companies that don't actually file any documentation. So, so working through that in a regulatory process that likes things that fit into boxes, and having stuff that doesn't fit in any of those boxes, it was some additional work that we had to get through. And then, again, it's really about, they just want to make sure that, you've got, the financial resources that you say you do, that you own the asset, and that you've got the capability to move it forward and deploy the capital that you're raising to take it forward. So, again, on those parts of the process, we didn't have any issues with that. It was just more the sort of that inherent complicated structure that we started with that didn't fit into one of those typical regulatory boxes that caused some additional time. But as I said, we're glad to be finally here through that finish line, and then again, we should have a pretty steady series of news flow from this point forward.
Okay, it's just interesting, because there were three different parties, and you had to get them to agree to the deal, and then you've got three different sets of data which you've kind of got to share or get into these boxes for the TSX. And were you managing that process, or was that all of you adding to the confusion, as it were?
Oh, no, that's it. You've got, three general counsels, you've got three sets of auditors.
Oh boy.
You've got three sets of lawyers. So,
oh boy.
It's, yeah.
Okay.
No, it's not a straightforward process.
We got to move. We got to move away from that.
More than worth it. So,
well, that's what I want to say. Let's move away from admin hell. It's my idea of hell. We always have people to do that. So, kudos to you for getting through that. Let's talk about what you've got. Give people a 1-minute summary of the deal that you've put together and what you've got, and then we'll kind of, again, remind people about what you're going to try to do.
Sure. We now own 100% of the Crawford Nickel Cobalt project. Since September, we've continued to advance the project. So we've been doing the drilling work that we need. We've been starting to do the mineralogy work that we need to do. And again, I think people are going to be surprised in terms of how far we've advanced this project already while we've been waiting to go public. And so there's going to be a very steady series of news flow over the next few weeks, which I think will really demonstrate, the potential that we believed was there with Crawford to be truly one of the great nickel cobalt sulfide discoveries of this decade and potentially beyond this decade.
Well, I mean, it's very timely for you. I look back to your RNC days with Dumont, and it's a great asset, but the timing wasn't quite there. It's 12 years in the making. It'd be one of those 12, 13-year overnight successes. Where your timing, nickel sulfide obviously is where you want to play. You're going to, I assume, be able to tell us a little bit about what you think you've got now, but I'm interested in how you're positioning this business, in terms of getting the cycle right, because we look at this, the wave of conversations we've had about nickel in the market, it's been phenomenal. The EV thematic is, no one's disputing that. It's a question of timing seems to be important. So do you think you've timed it right?
Oh no, I think that the timing's been perfect. As you said, with RNC, with Dumont, I spent 7 years, promoting a project when nickel was out of favor. And again, we were setting up to deliver a nickel project for the next nickel cycle, which has now arrived. Our view is we need to double the supply of nickel that we have right now by 2030, and there's only a handful of projects that are ready. So to get something like Crawford ready for this next cycle, I think is perfectly timed. And I think, if in terms of investors looking for sort of how far sentiment has shifted, BHP Billiton, for most of the prior decade was looking to sell their nickel business.
Right.
Mike Henry in their annual report out basically said we need more future-facing metals, we need more nickel, and we need more copper. So if the biggest mining company has done a 180, I can assure you that the management teams of every one of the other large mining companies is doing a similar view and has a similar take now on getting exposure to battery metals. And so again, having a large-scale potential asset like Crawford in a jurisdiction like Ontario, where in the Timmins camp, where mines have been permitted, in a relatively straightforward basis. I think the timing of this couldn't be better. And again, there's some other nickel sulfide opportunities we're looking at, because again, I think our team spent a lot of time looking at nickel sulfide when no one else did. So, we think we've got a leg up on the rest of the competition in identifying those assets that are going to be able to deliver the nickel the EV market needs by the end of this decade.
Okay, interesting. So, we spoke with Anthony Maluski last week, and we put a piece out at the weekend. He was quite complimentary of what you got, and people perhaps should take a look at that interview and sort of get his take on what you've got. What do you know about what you've got today, and then what are you going to do with it, and how do you pay for that? Because again, there's so many exploration plays we just aren't able to get the funding in place. I mean, you've just listed, you've got some cash now. What are you going to do with that cash?
Yeah, so again, I think the key thing is here, because we've got that experience, we're going to be able to accelerate the process and advance the process in a much more timely and cost-effective manner than we would, because Crawford is basically a very similar asset to Dumont with its own unique set of strengths. So with the money that we've raised, we'll have a resource out here very, very shortly, which I think will shock people in terms of just the scale of the resource that we've been all ready to drill with the few $1 million that we've raised to date. Again, I think as we take this forward, we'll be able to highlight, I think this resource will show what the potential of this property is. We've only drilled off, 15 to 20% of what we have at Crawford. And so, I think that's the highlight of that scale potential will be there. I think, what we've been able to deliver for the cash that we've invested to date will make it easier for the next set of investors to bring that money to, that next round of money that we need. And again, given our experience with Dumont, we'll be able to quickly advance Crawford into, the resource we have now into a PEA, and then look to, basically build out the other 85% of the property that we haven't drilled yet.
Right, and so, but what's the game plan here? You're using great words, so accelerated in value and all of those wonderful things, which lots of people do. But I need to understand what that actually means. So you're going to deliver a resource which you're saying gives you the scale, and you've told me before scale.
Yeah, we're going to deliver a real resource, that I think will surprise a lot of people when they see it next week, and that resource on its own will be large enough to help support. Moving, and what we've seen to date will allow us to move right into a PEA on that resource itself. We still have 85% of the property that we haven't explored yet.
Right.
And so again, now that we understand, what the best part of what we've drilled off already, we know there are other pieces on the property that we're going to be able to find. There's a good chance we're going to find, similar good stuff in other parts of the property to make it even larger, than what we have right now. And I think the key thing in this market, and again, to point to investors in generally, investing right now, the market is really bifurcated into two categories of assets. So if you own a world scale asset that the majors want to buy, and again, there's companies in Colombia and Ecuador, that have found the new range of copper gold elephants, those stocks have traded well. And then there's everybody else. And so, what we really want to show with this first resource is that, we're in elephant country. And so, and that we're going to hopefully find a bunch of elephants on this property, and have something that I think will be interesting to large mining companies, to large EV players, and to large EV suppliers, that this is exactly the kind of nickel cobalt resource they're looking to help build their business around.
Okay, so this is the bit that it interests me is the model. I need to understand this model. So you've got some money. You will deliver a resource next week. You will continue. You hope that'll have an impact on the share price. It also get people to notice, that you're here, because there are not too many of these around. Okay, I get that. I want you to help me understand what people are getting into. What will investors get into? Will it be just a long series of dilutory raises to kind of get you to where you need to be? How do you assure people that they're not in for a long, drawn-out process? And how quickly are you going to deliver your plan, where you do either hand it over to a big strategic who actually goes and puts the money in for this, or you bring in the strategic partners who, again, coming in at asset level and not diluting people, in the public company?
Yeah, no, I mean, again, we will be out to raise the next set of money for the PEA. That's the next stage that we need to get through. And we will have, we'll be looking to bring a strategic in at that point in time if the pricing makes sense. And so, and again, we've already had some interest on that front. I think, the key thing from here is we're going to advance in towards that, get that PEA done. And then from there, we'll be able to move right into a feasibility study. The key thing from a managing the process perspective is that you need to have some, and communicate to the market some very clear milestones that you are able to move quickly. Because if you can't demonstrate to the market that you're going to move quickly, then the large mining companies, suffer from inertia issues, and so they'll never quite get around to making that investment. But if it's very clear that if they don't step up today, or they don't step up in 3 months, or they don't step up in 6 months, we're going to be moving the ball, to use a sports analogy, moving the ball very quickly down the field, and they're going to find themselves chasing a valuation, which is hopefully, going to be improving materially, as we move forward here.
Okay, but let's come back to what some of those deliverables are, because again, a lot of companies use these phrases, and I want to separate cliche from actual delivery. Okay. What are the moments, and what do they mean for you?
Yeah, first resource out very soon. PEA out by the end of September, worst case end of October. Feasibility study out before the end of 2021. That's about as fast as that you can advance a project today. We're already assembling the PEA team in place, again, with experience with Dumont, that we're going to be able to bring that knowledge and experience to bear and be able to quickly, advance the project going forward.
Okay, and clearly each of those deliverables, you hope there's a bump in the price and you're able to raise money more cheaply each time. So there's not a long dilutory process here, and there's not a lot of money to get to feasibility. Is that what you're saying to me?
Yes, very much so. So again, I think when this resource comes out, in the coming week, people will be surprised, just how many tons of nickel we've delivered for how few exploration dollars at this point. The benefit of these large scale, low grade deposits is we're not drilling lots of 500-meter holes to hit 10-meter gold veins. We're drilling a 500-meter hole, of which 450 meters of that end up in assays that you can use in a model. Again, because the deposit doesn't twist and turn and get faulted in 50 different directions, you can use much wider drill spacing to define the resource that you're using. So both of those things help to be able to define, a very large resource very quickly.
So, right. So I'm going to ask a maybe difficult question, sure. Which is around, you talk about getting a strategic in around the PE stage. And if I look back at Dumont, Waterton came in there. RNC gave away, 78% of the company. And although it is a fantastic asset and it's worth a lot of money on the balance sheet for, could be worth a lot of money on the balance sheet for RNC. If you bring in strategics too early, are you in danger of giving away the company, or do you think you can negotiate a sensible and reasonable position?
Well, the key thing is, and again, when we did the Waterton deal, it wasn't really around any issue per se with Dumont. It was, a key portion of that deal was to, basically set up a joint venture fund to look to acquire other nickel sulfide assets in a time in the market where no one else was buying them. So, unfortunately, Cobalt 27 and Mr. Maluski came along about 2 months after we announced the deal. So people we had been talking with for several years who are getting to the point of, we're capitulating. If somebody shows up with a check, you can have my nickel sulfide asset. I think, if Cobalt 27 hadn't come along, we would have gotten a couple of those deals done. And I think the sort of logic of that transaction would have been, much clearer, to a lot of people, at that time. So that would have allowed us to have a whole portfolio of nickel sulfide assets that we could, the smaller, easier, cheaper restarts, complementing the much larger, large scale asset is key. And again, to your point as well, in terms of too early and giving away too much, again, this is a time in the market where, again, if BHP is already talking about more nickel, I can assure you that Rio Tinto and Anglo American and all the others are also talking about more nickel. And there's really very few ways to play it. So I have most of my net worth invested in this company. If you see, when I was at RNC, I was buying the stock all the way along through the ups and downs. And, again, here I've taken a bunch of that money and put it into this company. So, I will do the right deal at the right time. And again, if it means we have to wait a few months, I'm not going to build it for the sake of building it. I think some other mining companies, have done sort of full financing package deals where, there's a massive amount of dilution. Yes, you're going to get your project built, but how are your equity holders actually ever going to make any money off of this thing? Because you've basically, diluted their ownership interest in the project. You've diluted, you've issued a huge amount of equity relative to your current base. So it's going to be challenging for people to actually, get a return on their shareholder dollar. You as management are great because you now can build your projects. You're going to get your paychecks for 3 or 4 years, but your equity holders really aren't going to make any money.
Right. Okay. So you're cognizant of that point, that issue, and it's a consideration. Okay.
Yes, very, very so.
Okay. So how much do the management team own of the company?
I personally own 4%. My family own another 5%. Okay. And the management team as a whole has, over 10% of the company. Okay. I think that's one of the other strengths with this company too is, again, as a brand new company, we've got 57 million shares outstanding. There are no warrants. And there's a core group of individuals who spotted this opportunity initially, drilled those first 4 holes, in 2018, and are committed to seeing this through until, we, basically deliver what we think will be one of the, would be a great nickel cobalt sulfide project for the world.
Okay, so I know you're in a great part of the world. The infrastructure is there. Yeah. You're good. I'm not going to get into that.
Yeah.
Have you got any outstanding issues with regards to, permitting or First Nations or any liabilities, obligations, which you're still trying to resolve as part of this three-way triumvirate negotiation?
Yeah, the one thing again was this real strength of this area is that Noble Minerals, one of the first thing they did, they were the original property holder. They had an MOU in place with the local group of First Nations, Waban Tribal Council, who've been great to deal with since we've now moved into the relationship. We'll have an MOU with them shortly for the property. They have 6 impact benefit agreements in place, which is what you're going to need to have when you go to build the project. And again, once we kick off the PEA, we'll be looking to starting to advance that impact benefits agreement in place, to make sure that it doesn't become, a bottleneck on the timeline going forward.
Okay. Well, Mark, I just want to catch up. I know you've got a busy day. It's the bell has rung, as it were, and
yeah.
I hope people at least have a look at this. It's pretty exciting. Certainly a very exciting area to be playing in. Nickel sulfide is like I say, very, very topical. We get a lot of questions, and thank you did that series for us as well. And I think Anthony Maluski's kind of followed up with last week and sort of reinforced what you said with regards to winners and losers and red flags and things to look for. So good luck with it. When the resource number is ready, please call us, or we'll call you and let us know, because you seem quite excited by this scale.
Yes. Yeah. No. I think
I can see that.
Surprised. Yeah.
Okay. Well, congratulations on your new company. We wish you well. Let us know how you get on. Okay.
All right. Thanks, you, Matthew. And we'll be in touch soon for sure.
Brilliant.